Good afternoon again. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Florence Raju. I am a Year 1 Master of Fine Arts Creative Writing student and one of your Master of Ceremonies for this evening. I'll be joined by Ms. Afisha James, who's also on the stage. So I'd like to, first of all, it is our pleasure to welcome you to the gala reading and closing ceremony of the 26th Annual Campus Literature Week from the Department of Literary, Cultural, and Communication Studies in the Faculty of Humanities and Education. I'd like to start, of course, by acknowledging some persons in our presence. Consular General Elwin McKilkin, Grenada Consular and Trade Office. Dr. Elizabeth Walcott Hackshaw, Dean, Faculty of Humanities and Education. Dr. Suzanne Burke, Head, Department of Literary, Cultural, and Communication Studies. Professor Merle Collins, our writer-in-residence this year. Specially invited guests, media personnel, Master of Fine Arts Creative Writing Program Coordinator, Dr. Mule Amaye, our Master of Fine Arts students that are here today, and of course, you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Today's closing ceremony is the final and exciting gala event, which closes off our week-long activities. On Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of this week, we had in-person sessions and recordings by writers from all genres across Trinidad and Tobago. We've seen new voices. When you log on to our YouTube page or Campus Literature Week website, you'll be able to view all of the interviews, all of the readings, both live and recordings. Of course, we had conversations with Tony Dial and Marshall Montano, for example. I encourage you all to take a look and share it. But this week was really about our theme, which is crafting liberated words. And as I'm sure we will hear when we hear from our writer-in-residence, Professor Merle Collins, we'll hear a little bit more about what it really means as writers to craft words that impact society and move forward themes of liberation, human rights, recognizing where you're from, ancestry, and all of those things. So without any further delay, I'd like to say welcome again and pass the proceedings to my co-host, Ms. James.
Hi everyone. So I'm Afisha James. As she said, I'm a FA student as well in creative writing. First of all, we'd like to apologize for the late start this evening. We are deeply sorry, but let's get right into it, right? So the first thing we're going to do today, I'm going to introduce the head of department, Dr. Suzanne Burke. She's the head of the Literary, Cultural, and Communication Studies department.
Thank you. Duo MCs. Okay, good afternoon everyone. Consular General of Grenada, Mr. Elwin Joseph McKilquin, you all are hearing me? Yes. Dean, Faculty of the Humanities and Education, Professor Elizabeth Walcott Hackshaw. Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, Professor Apollo Cameron. Featured speaker, Professor Merle Collins. Past Dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Education, Professor Funcho Ayelvina. Directors and fellow heads of departments, the FHE, librarian, Miss Georgia Alexander, fellow colleagues, students, friends, welcome. On behalf of the Department of Literary, Cultural, and Communication Studies, it is indeed my pleasure to welcome you to the gala reading and closing ceremony of the 26th whoop, whoop, Annual Campus Literature Week, entitled Crafting Liberated Words. This year's installation marks an important milestone for the department as we acknowledge the one-year anniversary of the passing of our colleague and friend and renowned writer, Jennifer Rahin. It was actually this week last year. Dr. Rahin's practice was dedicated to art and the art and the act of liberation of Caribbean people, both at home and abroad. So it is fitting that this installation of Campus Lit Week underscores such an important construct for all of us. Certainly as Caribbean people, We have crafted words, spoken, written, or sung, throughout our history, and to quote Rex Netterford, as salves for the suffering caused by severance. Words continue to play a vital role in our continued efforts at liberation, holding as they do the potential for radical liberation by eradicating the self-disdain, the pain, and limitations that are part of the post-colonial psychic condition. Whether in the plaintive echoes or words of Rudder reminding us about Haiti's plight and our collective responsibility for the madness that has descended there. Haiti, I'm sorry. We must understood you. One day we'll turn our heads and look inside you. Or in the musings of Miss Lou, remarking how we as Caribbean people have changed the spatial dynamics of England by wondering how them going to stand colonizing in reverse. Words are transformative, and according to Conrad, the task of the writer, by the power of the word, is to make you hear, to make you feel. It is before all to make you see. In the various readings we had this week, both our established and emergent writers underscore the importance of the word as a vehicle for liberatory thought and action. Writing from this part of the globe, the role of words in unsettling the established order is necessary. It's not a luxury. And it is fitting that we close this evening with a keynote by Professor Merle Collins entitled Oceanic Journeys in the Voices of Caribbean Literature, where we continue this exploration of how we use words to change our vistas, to see and reimagine ourselves anew. We invite you to join us on this journey, and thank you for sharing this experience with us. I want to close with a chorus of one of Rudder's songs. You could tell I love Rudder, right? No kidding. Called In This Land, where he uses the magic of the word to free our minds, our bodies, and our spirits. And he says, then you free yourself, then you're off the shelf, then you lose control, rhythm in your soul. Pain just flies away, pain just dies away. Spirits rise, spirits rise, spirits rise higher. Enjoy. Thank you.
So next, we want to introduce Mr. Nicholas Locken, Festival and Program Coordinator, NGC Booker's Lit Fest.
Well, good evening, everyone, colleagues and friends. I am delighted to be here this evening and to have the chance to say a few words at this climactic event in Campus Literature Week 2024. Maybe in the way of greetings, but also in the way of thanks, most aptly. And of course, I know that we're all here for our feature author, and I don't want to delay her appearance any more than necessary. But there are four things that I want to say on behalf of the Booker's Lit Fest this evening. The first, of course, is to say welcome to Merle Collins. Those of you who are long-time attendees of our annual festival just might remember that Merle was in the lineup of authors at our very first festival in 2011, the one that sort of set the tone and standard for everything Booker's has done ever since. So it's a special pleasure for us to have her back in Trinidad and to have the chance to celebrate her latest book, Ocean Stirrings. What makes this evening even more special is that, as some of you may have seen, we announced the long list for the 2024 OCM Booker's Prize a few days ago, and Ocean Stirrings was named by the prize judges as one of the 9 outstanding Caribbean books of the past year. Please, big round of applause. And is now in contention for the OCM Booker's Prize for Fiction and then for the overall prize. So now I have the chance to say congratulations to Merle Collins in person. All right, second thing. I'm not sure if I should say I'm not as old as I look, or if I should say yes, I'm as old as I look. But it has been some years, or it's actually been some decades since I was a student here at St. Augustine. It's long enough ago that this building we're in now didn't yet exist. The MFA Creative Writing program didn't exist. And Campus Literature Week didn't exist. And back then, I dearly wished we had something like Campus Lit Week. And I'm not just saying that now, this evening, to be polite. So, in my undergrad days, I published and edited a very modest little magazine. It was literally a piece of paper like this folded in two. And I don't know if maybe Professor Ramchan or Professor Ayagina might remember it. I used to slip it under doors on campus. And I think there may be copies of it archived in the Alma Jordan Library. So if you were inspired to go and look them up, you would see that in around 1995, when some of you, there are probably some of you here who were not born, and some of the students don't even, that's like ancient history to them. But I wrote an editorial for that little magazine arguing that St. Augustine campus needed its own arts and literature festival. So it's probably not an accident that I ended up at Bocas. And although that UE Literature Festival didn't happen when I was still on campus, students now have, and we all now have, Campus Literature Week. 26 years, well, I feel even more old now. So I want to express my gratitude and admiration for Muli and her students and colleagues for making this happen every year. So please let's give them a round of applause. I run a literature festival for a living, and I can tell you it's not easy. You know, one event is not easy to put on. Okay, third thing, very quickly, which is just to say thanks also to the Faculty of Humanities and Education under Dean Elizabeth Walker Hackshaw and her predecessors for their long-term partnership with the Bocas Lit Fest, which goes all the way back to 2011. The festival and the faculty, with its various academic departments, have many common goals and ideals, and we look forward to continuing our partnership for many years to come. Fourth and final thing, I hope Campus Literature Week has whetted your appetites, because the 2024 NGC Bocas Lit Fest, our 14th annual festival, we have to do some catching up. I mean, 26 Campus Lit Weeks, only 14 festivals. It's just 6 weeks away. So in case you didn't know, it runs from Thursday the 25th to Sunday the 28th of April, as always, headquartered at the National Library in Port of Spain, and as always, with an overflowing, and for me, overwhelming program of readings, discussions, workshops, performances, music, events for children, events for young people, and much more. We'll be launching our festival program next week, Wednesday, so it will be up on our website that day. We hope you'll check it out, and we very much hope to see you at Bocas 2024 at the end of April. Thank you very much, and I can't wait now to hear from Will Collins.
Thank you so much. Okay, next up we have a bit of entertainment for you. So get comfortable and be prepared to be wowed. So we have Ms. LaShawn Prescott, who's an assistant professor of dance at the University of Trinidad and Tobago, holding an MSc in economics from the University of the West Indies and an MFA in dance from Tisch School of Arts, New York University. Her touring experience includes Europe, Canada, the USA, and the Caribbean. As lead dancer and choreographer with Marshall Montano for 7 years, as well as 22 states in the USA with international artist Pitbull, she has taught soca dance, Caribbean contemporary, and dance fitness workshops in South Africa, Australia, France, London, New York, Atlanta, Miami, Guadeloupe, and Martinique. Ladies and gentlemen, LaShawn Prescott.
The Door by Halcyon Prescott Alexander. The Door, nondescript in color, the portal to academia, but so much more. A path to fulfillment for those who dare to dream. The door, nondescript in size, the portal to success, but so much more. The road to freedom for the enslaved and oppressed. The door, nondescript in design, the portal to actualization of self, but so much more. The gateway to happy, for the weary, for the depressed. The door comes to life once opened, weighted with history, buzzing with now, a never-ending portal. A resolute how, for you, and you, and you. The Door by Halcyon Prescott.
Okay, great. Next, we have our writer-in-residence, and featured speaker for tonight, Professor Merle Collins. I'd like to steal this opportunity, just about 10 seconds, to say that I would have met Professor Collins in person only this year, and it has been some of the best conversations I would have had. Thank you. So, Professor Merle Collins is a Professor Emerita, University of Maryland. She is a writer of fiction, poetry, and critical essays. Her novels are Ocean Stirrings, a tribute to Louise Langdon Norton Little, mother of Malcolm X, and Seven Serpents. The Color of Forgetting, Angel, short story collections, Rain Darling, 1997, The Ladies Are Upstairs, 2011, a biography, The Governor's Story, the authorized biography of Dame Hilda Bynum. Her critical works include Themes and Trends in Caribbean Writing Today, In From My Guide to Sci-Fi Genre and Women's Writing in the Postmodern Modern World. To Be Free is Very Sweet, in Slavery and Abolition, Cultural Expression and the Grenada Revolution. Chapter in Nicole Phillips Dow and John Agnes Martin, Perspectives on the Grenada Revolution and Explorations of the South. Chapter in Raphael Delio and Cordella Ford's Caribbean Literature in Transition. She is also producer of a documentary, Saraka and Nation, exploring African influences on the culture of Grenada and its sister isle, Carriacou. From 1995 to 2021, she taught Caribbean literature and comparative literature at the University of Maryland, College Park, USA. She also served as chair of the Latin American Study Center, now the Latin American and Caribbean Study Center. Her formal academic qualifications include PhD, Government, London School of Economics and Political Science, University of London, MA Latin America Studies, Georgetown University, Washington, D.C., BA General Studies, English, Spanish, History, University of the West Indies, Mona, Jamaica. Other studies and certifications include Certificate in Translation, Spanish to English, Georgetown University, and courses in Latin American culture and at the Universidad Iberoamericana, Mexico City. Her latest novel, Ocean Stirrings, a tribute to Louise London Norton Little, mother of Malcolm X and 7 siblings, 2023, has been longlisted for the 2024 OCM Booker's Lit Prize for Fiction. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Murray Collins.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, LaShawn Prescott, for really thought-provoking dance performance. As I begin here, I stand on the protocol already established, but I want to say a special welcome to the Grenada's Consul General, who, although you don't know it, also wrote a song for Louise Langdon Norton Little, mother of Malcolm X. And I think that is really, worth saying here, announcing here. I also want to say how wonderful it was for me to meet Professor Kenneth Ramchand here, since he was really responsible, one of the people responsible for those early days at Mona, the introduction to Caribbean literature. I thank the Department of Literary, Cultural and Communication Studies here at UWI St. Augustine, Dr. Susan Burke, Head of Department, Professor Elizabeth Walcott Hackshaw, Dean of Humanities and Education, and I thank the person who has been most directly in touch with me, carting me here and there, arranging meetings, constantly in contact to see if things are going well, and that's Dr. Mulia Mai. Thank you, Dr. Mai. And thank you to administrative personnel without whom a lot would not get done. Miss Adele Bain, Miss Chanel Figaro, Mr. Johan Bennett, and others who were greeting me pleasantly all the time and asking if things were going well. That definitely makes a difference. And there's also Mr. Dexter Baird, responsible for the photo and book display in the library, and as I list them all, you can hear how much it takes to put something like this together. We always need assistance for the things we sometimes say that we accomplish single-handedly, and that single-hand thing doesn't work. One cocoa full basket, as we say. So thanks to the students and professors who have welcomed me, with whom I've interacted, and from whom I've always learned. Your insights, your questions, professors and students. Dr. Amaye's MFA student, Dr. Carissa students, Dr. Carissa Granger's students, Dr. Micheline Adams' students, and undergraduate creative writing class of Darren Gibson. Your discussions have all contributed to my really feeling good here. And thank you, Roger McFarlane, not only for being photographer and electronic arranger-in-chief, but also for facilitating use of computer and office space and helping to keep me connected. Dr. Elizabeth Jackson, I have to mention you and thank you for constant presence at lunchtime readings and for really rewardingly pleasant interaction. Dr. Micheline Adams, you see, there are so many people who made all of this possible, who made me feel welcome here. Thank you for so much in our occasional meetings and the huge little things you did to ensure my comfort. And although Dr. Merle Hodge is officially off campus, I add her to this list of thank yous because it has been a great joy reconnecting and talking literature and revolution. NGC Bocas Literature Festival, celebrating books, writers, and writing from the Caribbean and the world. Thank you too for co-sponsoring this event and for your continuing interest and attention. Mr. Nicholas Laughlin and everyone else, not only to my voice and story, but to voices and stories throughout this region and its diasporas. And members of the audience, by now you say it, so when you go finish, say that. All right. And I'm pleased that you are here, so now let's talk about oceanic journeys in the voices of Caribbean literature. Oceanic because I think about the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, as in some ways a beginning for the explorations of many Caribbean writers, and certainly for the joys and sorrows of Caribbean people on this side of the sea. As Derek Walcott's poem avers, that grey vault, the sea, is history. The Guyanese writer Fred Degar, in his novel Feeding the Ghosts, plumbs the depths of the story of the slave ship, the Zong, to introduce his readers to a woman named Minta in his imaginative recreation, thrown overboard and somehow finding her way back onto the ship in what has been described as a suspenseful story of the struggle to live, even when threatened by oblivion. Haiti's Evelyn Chouliot says that our connection with the sea is unique because it goes beyond the beauty. I think too of Kamau Brathwaite's conceptualization of a stone skidding from the tip of Florida, arcing across the sea and blooming into islands, or a trail of bones beneath the sea during the Atlantic, formed as a result of the crossing. Cuban Nancy Morejon's Mujer Negra, Black Woman, still smells the foam of the sea they made her cross. In her poetry collection Zong, Trinidadian, Tobagonian, Marlene Nobesi Phillip also explores that story of the Zong, the story that in November 1781, the captain of the slave ship Zong ordered that some 150 Africans be thrown overboard so that the owners of the ship, rather than face a possible loss from sick bodies on that journey, would be able to collect the insurance money. One blurb describes the Nobesi text as equal parts song, moan, shout, oath, ululation, curse, and chant. Zong, the sea is history. And the Guyanese writer Mahade Das also turns in her poetry to the story the sea holds. They came in ships, they came in fleets, they came in droves like cattle, brown like cattle, eyes limpid like cattle. Some came with dreams of milk and honey riches. In salt, Earl Lovelace's Guinea John flies back to Africa across that ocean. Janice Shinebone's The Last Ship explored the story of the old lady, Clarice Chung's grandmother, who had come to British Guyana in 1879 on the last ship to bring Chinese people to the colony. And Vanni Capildeo writing Nameless Bones Below Oceans. In Velma Pollard's Crown Point, the sea hums endlessly. Grace Nichols' long-memoried woman swimming across the Atlantic, and you hear the sea too in Grenadian writer Jacob Ross's evocatively titled Listen, the Sea. In Eddie Ball's And Respect is Due, sometimes in the middle of the story, the sound heard outside could be the sleep sigh of a drowned African turning in his sleep on the ocean floor. Jennifer Rahim, again, respect is due, wrote, "Wherever I go, there will be an island, and an ocean will be what rings me." And as the sea becomes exotica to others, Olive Sr. mourns the loss of the coves and beaches once seen through seaside shacks and palm trees. And as I think how for me, the ocean is a constant metaphor for the stories of the Caribbean, I listen to some of what I heard these last weeks from students here at UWI. Stories rooted in fiction, speculative and realist, fiction and poetry in voices, standard English and Creole, along the whole line of the continuum that is Caribbean speech, exploring the continuing stories of the people who came from or who came through the ocean, referencing continuing struggles expressed in a variety of ways, with differing methods, themed around Anansi and Papa Bois, referencing guns and drugs, looking back to federation, stories built, whether the writers realized it or not, on the earlier themes, focusing on the churning of the ocean. My current novel, Ocean Stirrings, has a central character named Ocean, which is a Creole word for ocean, carrying in herself the stories of Caribbean peoples shaped by oceanic histories like some of those explored by the writers I have mentioned. Ocean came to life as I thought of ways to pay tribute to the story of Louise Lambden Norton Little, the mother of Malcolm X, who was born in La Digue, St. Andrew's Parish, Grenada. When I was growing up in Grenada, in the yard of my primary school, the St. Paul's Government School, we children played a game called Up and Down the Deck. We appointed a captain. We divided the yard into parts of a ship, galley, quarterdeck, etc. One rule of the game was that it was not where the captain pointed, but his voice, what he said, that we had to listen out for and obey. And then a chant started by the captain, up and down the deck, and then some voices shouted, keep moving. So it was a call and response. Up and down the deck, keep moving. Up and down the deck, keep moving. Nice. All right. And then the captain, who was the one really in charge, might shout, boom overhead. And we were supposed to know that this meant that the boom the imaginary rod outstretched from an imaginary mast was right overhead, and we were to go down, duck, or it would knock us overboard and out of the game. It was a game we enjoyed. Years later, I thought about this game and conceptualized it as a memory of the Middle Passage and the Atlantic crossing. And the poem was published years ago in my collection, Rotten Bumerack, Up and Down the Deck. Sea water, they always tell us from experience, have no branch. So we play our sea games on the land, frightened by the sea, haunted by the land. Children, sea water have no branch, you know. We commandeer a boat, find ourselves a captain, shout, rock the boat with moving. Up and down the deck,
keep moving.
Up and down the deck,
Keep moving.
Perhaps the past holds us more tightly than we know. No ship crossing the Atlantic now. The whiplash is only our chosen captain's voice. But we rush to galley, to quarterdeck, stop to dance, stop to look, stop to listen for our canny captain's trickery. Stop to decide if survival lies on deck or overboard. Quarterdeck, perhaps it's not the voice, but the hands that will speak our dying. Boom overhead, and the yard ducks, swift and silent as death remembered. Keep moving, and the frenzied song and stomp begins again. A story spawned perhaps from yesterday, written on pages that do not fade with time. A ship's journal brought to show in a children's game of life and death remembered. Boom overhead, sea water, they always tell us from experience, have no branch. So now, beached on these islands, listening to the sea's thundering whisper, watching its changing waves, we play our frantic sea games on the land. As I conceptualize it, in the first part of Ocean Stirrings, as the grandmother of Ocean, who is the central character of the novel, tells about her story of life in 19th century Grenada, she remembers this game. And here's a short extract from the early pages of the book. All right, let me see if I can see it. Okay, I like to act like I don't really need glasses, but sometimes I'm not so sure. At least most times I'm not so sure, but all right. So this is just this small extract, short extract that I'll read is from the voice of the figure in the novel who is really kind of representative of the grandmother of Louise Langdon. But of course, you know, it's a work of fiction, so I'm not saying this is what happened, but inspired to create this character by the story of Louise Langdon's life. So this is a grandmother remembering things. The main game she remembers playing was Up and Down the Deck. Whoever was the captain would shout at all the other children to keep moving, and when somebody didn't move fast enough and the boom knocked into them and they fell overboard into the sea and out of the game, the whole yard would fall apart laughing. Up and down the deck, keep moving, and if you don't duck fast enough when you hear boom overhead, you tumble down in the water. So then they would fall on the ground, and that used to make them laugh. Sometimes they would stoop down laughing, the thing so sweet. And they only kept from rolling on the ground because they knew that somebody might take the opportunity to say that they're out of the game because they fall into the sea. So you had to stand your ground. They used to enjoy that. But the big people sitting down in the doorway watching them would laugh a different kind of laugh and say, yes, laugh. All you do no trouble in truth. So back on net means alright? So one of the things that is happening here, and of course as soon as you leave the computer for 2 minutes, it kind of goes off. Alright? So let me explain. You hear the use of that Creole there in the last part of that reading. And that Creole was a major working people's voice in 19th century Grenada. By the time Britain cycled into colonial rule in the island, Grenada had been in the hands of the French for some 117 years. And of course it showed in the language with the working people speaking Creole and also knowing some French words and some prayers in French, because this was politically French speaking, and in terms of religion, the Catholic Church, so Latin and French would have been heavy church languages. And if you read Merle Hodges' recent book, One Day Congo Tea, you also see the use of Creole in Trinidad during this period, because people are moving from one island to the other, and also because of Trinidad's own history. So people knew these languages, although, as my Creole-speaking mother and grandmother would say, "Ki no sa." We know prayers and church thing, and then she might say, "Well, that's important, so back on it." I suppose you could say, "We know." So in the opening of this novel, Ocean Stirrings, listen to the people with this language that they know. Kumawe, how things, and what you know good. Saukadilla, Tiffy, you got it, Belwy, girl, you're looking nice, yes? And you don't have to tell me something in the mortar beside the pestle. Upan ni put dimoy ni kesho na pillow apase mashla. Epi, woyoyo, demo en place la. Trouble in the place. Sometimes they have to help up two languages, Delang, to tell the story going on around them. Sometimes one is enough. And always they laugh out loud, sounding gleeful, as if they have secured the secret to survival. Not that life is easy. Life has never been easy. Sometimes on the hill in La Digue and the surrounding areas, when the rain don't fall to water the hillside land, and when the estate acting as if laborer is river dog, things hard like Boli, which is the name their ancestors left them for the calabash. But anyway, God good, Papa Bondre bon, and then making it. Let me explain that this novel came partly from my interest in what was said about the mother of Malcolm X in the autobiography of Malcolm X and other publications, especially those done by her children. From Malcolm X and his biographer Alex Haley comes this information. Louise Little, my mother, who was born in Grenada in the British West Indies, looked like a white woman. Her father was white. She had straight black hair, and her accent did not sound like a Negro's. Of this white father of hers, I know nothing except her shame about it. I remember hearing her say she was glad that she had never seen him. So after reading this in the autobiography of Malcolm X, sensing a story like that written about by historians like Professor Hilary Beckles, motivated by what I was increasingly learning of the life of Louise Little, her connections to other colonial spaces like Trinidad, I went in search of what I concluded was in many ways not her story alone, but that of several colonized Caribbean people of the 19th century. As I read more, I realized that there were many of the social and economic aspects of her story shared by a wide cross-section of Caribbean people. What her children said about the way she educated them made me think of the West Indies of the period, of early Federalists like Theophilus Albert Marichaud, whose newspaper, The West Indian, founded in 1915, had the motto, "The West Indies must be West Indian." And I thought of how the children wrote that their mother made them read this paper. I went in search of her rural Grenada school and of the Royal Readers, because her son, Wilfred Little, wrote that she had told them she went to an Anglican school in Grenada, that the teachers did not spare the rod and spoil the child, and they felt that their mother learned that lesson well. And she told them to pick up the dictionary and learn how to syllablize things. And I heard that word syllablize, and I read it, and I thought, the Royal Reader. So I went searching out the Royal Reader, which did indeed have a sequence of lessons about breaking up words into syllables. Because people were constantly talking about how educated the mother was, and I could find no evidence of her going beyond Standard 5 in a rural school, I found myself reading Legislative Council minutes, as I can tell that Merle Hodge also does for her recent novel, One Day Kongote. In fact, when I read One Day Kongote and seeing the constant references to the LegCo, I said, okay, it's the same Legislative Council. That one in Trinidad and the other I was researching in Grenada. I found myself reading and reading the Royal Reader to get a sense of what an activist teacher might be able to do with it. Reading and rereading the poems that children would have been chanting by rote before going out to work on their own perceptions of rhythm with the skipping rope, and so celebrating the wisdom that generations of Caribbean people who did not go beyond primary school accrued either directly from the classroom or from a mix of the classroom and the community activism of parents. Because of what Louise Little's children could teach, I was motivated to do that search, and I included many Royal Reader lessons in the imagined story of Ocean. Research suggests that Louise Little, as I said, reached Standard 5, that she was in a rural primary school at a time when the Legislative Council was quietly discussing the need to focus on what were regarded as, and I quote, the more important centers of population. So I am reading this in the Legislative Council minutes and realizing that where Louise Little lived in a rural area was not one of the more important centers of population. because the Legislative Council minutes essentially saying that the town schools, the urban areas, these were the more important centers of population. And they are speaking about not wasting on country children more than, and again I quote, the education that the vast numbers of our peasantry need to prepare them for their lot in life. In other words, they're saying, don't give country children too much because we need, well, they wouldn't say it like that, right? But that's the idea here, don't give country children too much because we need their estates worked. And that is their lot in life. So all over the Caribbean, we have a rural-urban divide that we might think we invent, but the LegCo minutes suggest that that divide too is a part of our colonial conditioning. So the once enslaved, the descendants of those who were once enslaved, the Indians and Africans liberated, and that term liberated was a term used by the British for those taken from slave ships of other countries after 1807, when the British stopped the slave trade. So they were liberating Africans from the ships of the Portuguese and the Spanish, etc., and taking them to work in their own countries. So Louise Langdon, and so that of course that word liberated Africans is more than a euphemism. Louise Langdon was a girl to boot, and girls didn't need much of an education, was the colonial idea. So I felt inspired by the story of a woman who got that education. And as Sparrow tells us, Dan is the man in the van, as Sparrow suggests, is Dan and the man in the van, got that miseducation and became an activist, became a Pan-Africanist talking to her children in Michigan, USA, about the need to ignore those who told them that as black children or as Negro children, to use the more friendly term of the time, those who told them that they were not to aim high. I was inspired by the story of a woman telling her children that they should ignore their teachers. By the way, I'm not telling you that at all, because there were bright and articulate black people all over the world, in Africa, in the Caribbean, in the US itself. She, Louise Langdon, was telling them, according to her son Wilfred, that they should not be narrow national thinkers. And this is a quotation from what Wilfred says his mother told them. But they should consider the world, they should consider the entire world and think in international terms. So I wanted to check both the possibilities of Louise Langdon defying her education and of her seizing it and subverting it. Hence my focus on her main text, the Royal Reader, to try, in a sense, to tease out ideas about what generations of parents and grandparents who did inspire their children and grandchildren to see what they worked with and what they worked against. I considered not only what an activist teacher might do to subvert what he knew the Legislative Council was trying. And so that led me to the character in the novel called Sir, and also Mr. Ansel, which was the actual name of one of Louise Langdon's teachers, said by a classmate to have been a Carib from Dominica who gave her extra lessons. Engaging with the colonial text and taking material directly from the Royal Reader that I too used, by the way. I had the class working, formulating its own rhythms, reading Lord Byron's The Destruction of Sennacherib's Army in the classroom, and then going outside later to practice perhaps a rhythm influenced by that, but also a rhythm taking shape on Caribbean soil as they skipped outside. So they enjoyed what Sir told them was Tennyson's anapestic tetrameter, and they said, Lord in heaven, how so like big words so, right? So Sir is telling them that this anapest is like da-da-dum, 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 like the galloping of a horse. But when they went outside to skip, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, mio, 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 something else taking shape. And I was interested in this change of rhythm, not quite sure what yet in Standard 5, but as far as the children were concerned, they were just enjoying Lord Byron while they were forming their own. So in the text, I was also paying honor to generations for whom that was the text. Paying honor to the grandmother of Louise Langdon, remembering Sparrow, of course, and Dan is the man in the van. A critique in a sense, as well as a celebration of rhythm, thinking of the woman who sent her girl child to extra lessons in the early 20th century, who seemed to work on the premise that education would get her child somewhere. And you know, a lot of people, that's the premise that people work on. So it sounds to me like that is a tribute to the grandmother, to the mother, to the teachers, the activist teachers of her primary school. And I felt, you know, perhaps we need to think about what you can do with what you are given, even as you critique it. So let me give you this page here. And don't, the classroom where they are reading a poem. The poem had a nice racy beat, and this is when they're reading Lord Byron's The Destruction of Sennacherib's Army. Sir divided the class into 2, girls against boys. Today there are 8 boys and 5 girls. Sir said that 2 of the boys could go over to the girls' side if they wanted to. The boys didn't want to go, and the girls didn't want them. And it was poetry, and Sir was not insistent, so it remained like that. Everyone said out loud, "The destruction of Sennacherib's army," in the deep, strong way that Sir said that Sir had taught them. Nothing papesy, he always said, because Sir could talk natural talk when it was poetry. He just made sure not to put in too many natural words. Sung as if you mean it. So they recited the title good and strong, The Destruction of Sennacherib's Army, and the girls started. The Assyrian came down like a wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming with purple and gold. And the sheen of their spears was like stars on the sea, when the blue waves rolled nightly on deep Galilee. And then the boys, some of them with voices changing, so that they were sounding kind of cranky. Like the leaves of the forest when summer is green, that host with their banners at sunset was seen. Like the leaves of the forest when autumn hath blown, that host on the morrow lay withered and strown. And the girls came back at them sure and strong, sounded more like 15 girls than 5, Ocean thought. For the angel of death spread his wings on the blast, and breathed in the face of the foe as he passed. The girls leaned across and breathed long at the boys as they said it, and the eyes of the sleepers waxed deadly and chill. The girls' voices slowed down nice and chilly, and their hearts but once heaved. And they heaved. Marjorie heaved so hard that she fell off the bench, and forever was still. But Marjorie got up, and then the boys performed, dead serious, trying to outdo their rivals. And there lay the steed with his nostrils all wide, and Anthony made his nostrils tremble in the way he did for them at break time. But through them there rolled not the breath of his pride, and the foam of his gasping lay white on the turf, and cold as the spray of the rock-beating surf. They slowed down and tried to sound cold and dead, and then came the girls, well dead, and there lay the rider, distorted and pale, with the dew on his brow and the rust on his mail, and the tents were all silent. The girl said it slow, 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 and dead, dead. The banners alone, the lances unlifted, the trumpets unblown. And the girls wished they had the next verse alone because they knew they could blow the boys out of the competition. But Sir made the whole class say it. So the boys came in, even though the girls said afterwards that they thought the boys well spoiled the team. And the widows of Asher are loud in their wail. The girls were loud in their wail. Jessie was so loud that Gertrude looked at her bad eye and found a space in the pause after the next line to mutter, what do your mother dead? And the idols are broke in the temple of Baal, and the might of the Gentile, unsmote by the sword, hath melted like snow in the glance of the Lord. Ocean thought the boys were kind of raggedy, but the girls said it's slow and powerful and strong. And Ocean concluded, oh, yo, that is the best poem ever. The best poem ever. So you see how the children are enjoying Lord Byron's destruction of Sennacherib's army in their own way and commenting to each other. And then later on, further on in the chapter, when they go outside now, this is the girls learned the words with a skipping rope during break. Anapestic, tetrameter, dum 1, 2, 3, and swing the skipping rope round and round over the heads of the girls stooping down. Mio, mio, rio, and up and skip. Anapestic, tetrameter, and dum 3, 4, 5, and swing the skipping rope again. Mio, mio, rio, and up. And the boys learned it by pretending to tease the girls and moving their waists round and round and taking the opportunity to learn it while the girls skipped. But remembering what it meant was a different thing. So here we have how they are enjoying this, and what we think might be possible coming out of that, how they in fact are deciding on their own rhythms, but at the same time enjoying the rhythms that they are given. Perhaps not in the way that it was intended, but certainly enjoying. And I will refer to a piece right at the end of Ocean Stirrings. The book continues to be a tribute to Louise Langdon, whose other last name, Norton, becomes important in the diaspora. I was interested in that because it's not only her story. Many people discover another name when they have to travel and pick up a birth certificate showing how they were registered by relatives or others. In the book, the storyline for Ocean's journey continues to be influenced by the story of Louise Langdon Norton's life. Louise Langdon leaves Grenada in 1917, travels to Montreal, meets and marries Earl Little, becomes, with her uncle, a member of Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. By the end of 1919, she is married to this man from the US. She travels with him to Philadelphia, then to the American Midwest. They are Garveyite activists establishing UNIA groups in Nebraska, in Michigan. So the book explores themes of race and gender as the Caribbean migrant understands and begins to explore race in the USA. She herself has Pan-Africanist ideas, and this has an impact on her life of activism. And I explore what this could be like. And by the end of the novel, Ocean's journey, like Louise Little's journey, has taken her to live in areas that by law she should not be occupying with her family, because these areas are meant for Caucasians only. And estate agents are comfortable saying this because it is the law. By the end of the novel, the husband is dead, and the implication is that the agents of the state are determined to teach the black activist woman a lesson. She has gone through a lot. A psychiatrist whom her eldest son, now 17, consults, says that she needs complete rest and she would be all right in a while. Other administrators, a judge, social workers, those who have authority to administer her husband's pension, don't like this. So it seems that the psychiatrist decides to be silent when she is picked up and literally dragged out of her house to a mental institution. That is the story that Ocean too acts out. Eventually, Ocean, drugged and constantly interrogated in the institution, does lose a sense of herself. Her children, the youngest of whom is only months old, are living in various homes, she has heard. She can only wonder about them. She has no access to them. The years pass, and in her head, they remain the little children she left. Eventually, the children, now grown, get together and ensure that they get the authority to remove her from the institution. But it has been some 26 years. For that, they have to tell her to stop resisting, to let it be seen that she is calm and improving. So these themes give the reader a chance to think about women and mental health, women who are institutionalized, women who, it is assumed, have to have someone who speaks for them, women forced to make decisions about their bodies and childbearing. So in the final part of the work, for a fractured psyche, the narrative is fractured. Fiction, we might say, is rendered in poetic form, and some of you might say, what is that? But anyway, here's a piece. Right, and I'm thinking of, well, several people, so let me not call it today. So here's a piece from that section of the book. And remember, this is now towards the end, and this is called The Judge. My children get big, and they find out. I remember from long ago that finding out is a thing you must do. They find out that Judge Leland Carr signed to get us off the property in 1929. It is because you're a negress, Mom. We were a Negro family. Negro, negress, Negro children. A negress. And my husband, you see, he was a Negro. That was the thing that killed him, they say. It killed some of his brothers too, being a Negro. So we could not legally occupy property in the white area. That's why the judge was making sure to throw us off the land. We couldn't legally live in the places where they live. And that same judge, they tell me, get me committed. Tell the authorities that are mad, and he find a doctor that agree. Judge and doctor, judge and jury. But my son tell me, all of them listening. Keep quiet, Mom, he say, but take it easy in there. They still have to agree. So do what they say and take it easy. Our children are listening. And our children will fight with that word legal one day. Our children are listening. That is legal. Our children are listening. I have seen them. I'm remembering the past and I'm seeing the future. They are listening. Mightn't be tomorrow, but look for me in the whirlwind. My children, listening. And it's 2 more pieces and then I'm done. But sorry, computer talking quietly up here. So, and now I want to read a piece which is really about location, meaning if I were doing a reading and it wasn't Trinidad, I mightn't read this piece, but I want to read it. So now making you wonder, hey, what is that? And it's set, this piece is set at the end of the 1890s. Ero and Ma. Ero is Ma's son. Ero told her that just earlier this month there was a boat in St. George's, a boat named something like Louise, well, something or the other, a boat with people, tourists, Ero said, coming for the races that the high-up people now starting to have at the racetrack down there in Granans, down by Tongside. And Ero said they even going to have horses from Trinidad, and they having all kind of picnic down there at a place called Quarantine Station in South St. George. Good for them, the bread well butter, pen you need bet. And Trinidad getting bigger and bigger these days, yes? Since they take Tobago away from us doing what? And join it up with them. Just now people would have to say Mr. Trinidad. About 10 years or a little more since that happened. It's like Trinidad get bigger in its boots suite. Not 10 years yet now, about 7. Because Ero was a little boy, about 10 years old according to what he see on his birth paper. 10 years old when it happened. So remember I'm using the historical scaffolding. And this is about, they're talking about just about 7 years before where this is set in 1889 when this piece of thing that Ma, not me, that Ma is talking about there, that actually happened. All right, well, Tobago. And now I'll read the final thing. Give me one moment. So, as Ocean leaves the institution to go out into the world and rejoin her family, she remembers a poem that she had read long ago. And guess where she read it? In the Royal Reader, exactly. So this fractured narrative is where I end this presentation, and it has quotations from that anonymous. It has quotations from an anonymous poem in Royal Reader, Book 1, and it's called 1960s Little Wheel and Big Wheel, and that's the name of the title of the Royal Reader poem. Says the big wagon wheel to the little wagon wheel. What a difference between us I see. As our course we pursue, can a small thing like you keep up with a great thing like me? Me? I am royalty. Even if I have to whisper it to me, I know I am royalty. I remember the poem. Says the little wagon wheel to the big wagon wheel, you are larger, I own, my good friend, but my quickness supplies what I want in my size, so I keep in the front to the end. Don't fret for me. I keep in the front to the end, yes? Yes, I laugh in. Use the old lines. Learn the rhythm and the feeling. Make them your own. Change and reshape them. I going out of this place, as my grandmother would say, if you live long enough and just have patience, you see inside Aunt's belly. Adam put there for me. Lang epida, tongue and teeth. You live and you learn. Sometimes the lesson's hard, but you learn. Even when those who don't like you think the story is theirs, make it yours. Make it yours. I have my children's hand to hold on to now, so I keep to the front in the end, yes? I keep in the front to the end with. I keep in the front to the end. Thank you all very much.
The ocean is the beginning of exploration for Caribbean writers. The ocean is a constant metaphor for the stories of the Caribbean. Thank you, Professor Collins, for your insight into the role of the ocean in crafting liberated words. Your views on the life and achievements of Louise Langdon and the need to challenge expectations by breaking down divisions and barriers imposed by colonial powers resonates with all of us, I'm sure. I encourage you all to secure a copy of Ocean Stirrings. It is certainly relevant to each of us in understanding our origins and experiences as Caribbean people. This evening, as we join together to thank Professor Collins for her words and sharing her work, one chant I'm sure will remain on our minds as we continue to play sea games in the landscape of life. Up and down the deck? Please put your hands together once again for our writer in residence for 2024, Professor Merle Collins. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the evening's formal proceedings. I have to, on behalf of all of us at the Department of Literary, Cultural, and Communication Studies, extend sincerest gratitude to key persons responsible for tonight's event. Once again, Dr. Elizabeth Walcott Hackshaw, Dean, Faculty of Humanities and Education, Dr. Suzanne Burke, Head, Department of Literary, Cultural, and Communication Studies, Ms. Georgia Alexander, Librarian, Humanities Division at the Alma Jordan Library. We must also acknowledge the hard work of her library staff and the technical officers, the UWI Marketing and Communications Department, the Center for Language Learning, including our technicians here, the Division of Facilities Management, our campus security services, the NGC Bocas Literature Festival team, and I take this opportunity to remind of the upcoming NGC Bocas Lit Fest, which will be held at Nallis from Thursday 25th to Sunday 28th April. So once again, we encourage everyone to attend. Our media personnel, Ms. LaShawn Prescott, thank you for that moving and emotional performance. The paper-based bookshop team, our caterers, Mr. Roger McFarlane, technical assistant at the Department of Literary, Cultural, and Communication Studies, Ms. Chanel Figaro, clerical assistant in the department, all of our noontime readers and participants. I acknowledge the presence of Niala Luna. Niala Bagman Singh is one of our readers, and her recording will be aired this evening. Thank you for joining us. All of the MFA students, our MFA coordinator, Dr. Mule Amaye, a special thank you to you for all of your hard work. And of course, many thanks to all of you who took the opportunity to join us here as we end our Campus Literature Week. Thank you to our guests. I invite you all to join us downstairs. Please buy your books at the Paper Shake Bookshop, and let's open up this evening's mix and mingle and relaxed casual session. Thank you again, and good evening.